people will think, oh my gosh, how did you live in a 576 square foot apartment with a wife, 2 kids, and a dog, and a hamster, actually, that whole time? And I look back on it, and to be very honest, my wife and I sit on our 13-acre property with ponds and streams and everything that we've always dreamed about having, and we look at that little 576 square foot apartment, the fact we didn't have any money in the checking account, and those were some of the happiest 3.5 years of our lives. We had nothing, but we had everything. I guess is the easiest way to say it.
Welcome to the Secrets of Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Keis. Well, today's guest, Jay Hodge, has an interesting story where after high school went into the military. Actually, he was in college for about 12 months or even less than a year before he found out his wife was pregnant, so that I just really can't continue the school, I better go work. So it really is Jay's study and working with many multinational companies on how to really optimize systems and performance and leadership in, what are some of the qualities and characteristics that really he's had to embrace to get to where he's at today. So we talk about several different things and just the importance of processes, engaging people, and paying attention to what's most important to you. Now, as always, we thank you for being a listener. If you like what we're doing, pass it on, share it, leave a positive response in whatever platform you're listening on. Now, this show is sponsored by Consulting Resource Group, which is our publishing and training company, and, producing 12 psychological assessments. The personal style indicator being, in our opinion, and also not really our opinion, but the opinion of the participants, is the #1 personality assessment in the world, based on the feedback we have from our participants for over 20 years. And there's multiple reasons for that, but we've also built a course around that assessment, which is built on my book, Why Aren't You More Like Me? So you can take just the assessment, the personal style indicator, or you can go in depth and really understand the differences about, your personal style, other people call it personality, developing the whole person. We give you brand new definitions and fresh ones, in fact, ones that fit. We're going to suggest that the definitions of introversion and extroversion really don't include everybody. It's discriminatory, and it's really excludes some individuals out there that we interact with. And so a lot of us just say, hey, I don't really fit with this other definition. So I will cover that, and I cover that in detail in the course. And that is part of our one-day program converted into an online course called Why Aren't You More Like Me? So thank you again for listening and being a listener. If you know of somebody who would be an amazing guest, let us know. Or maybe there's some questions or directions or thoughts for us, then we're open to hear from it and just share it on the platform you're listening on. So here is the Secrets of Success episode with Jay Hodge. Welcome to the Secrets of Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Keis. Well, have you ever thought about how can we find or have people more engaged? How can we have individuals just feeling more motivated in life or inspired? And so today's guest, Jay Hodge, is going to help us with that. And he's also authored a book, and we'll talk about that here in a second as well. So, Jay, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ken. It's a pleasure to be on.
Now, Jay's so busy, audience, that he's pulled off on the side of a road in the middle of Indianapolis, or Indiana, pardon me. The corn's not up yet at this time of the year when we're recording this, so we can't tell them. We're not going to try to stale date this episode because people are going to watch it and listen to it forever. So thank you for taking the time, Jay, to kind of hang out with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
So, Jay, one of the things we do, and of course I was just mentioning your book here, which is The Lean Treasure Chest. It says, does that say photos of fatherhood?
It does, and I misspelled it on purpose, and everyone asks me that. I misspelled it because as you read the book, it identifies that there is no such thing as a perfect father, and so I was a prelude to the fact that that's what that is.
So you have a book about fatherhood, but now you're a consultant to business and helping employee engagement in management and leadership. So how do those two connect?
They both require humility. There's no doubt about that. To be a good father, or at least an adequate father, you have to be humble. And to be honest, when you're working with organizations as a consultant, you have to be humble enough to know that every organization is different. Every organization has opportunities. They're all unique, and you have to know that going in, not have an assumption that you know everything walking in the front doors.
I could concur with that for sure. So let's just kind of drill back or fold back or look back, whatever way we want to describe it. And you've listened to some of the episodes, and Jay, we always like to get to know our guests from their journey point of view, their story. So what part of the country did you grow up, and what was sort of your story or journey as a kid with your family?
Sure. I grew up in Indiana until I was 16, so we were lower middle class. I'll just throw it out there. I was an undersized kid. I started mowing yards when I was 8 years old, and this is no joke. People say you're kidding. If you look at a push mower handle has the top handle, and then it has the bar that runs across in the middle. I used to stand between those two handles and push mow the neighbor's yards to make money. People thought it was rather strange looking, but it worked for me. So, yeah.
So you became the lawnmower millionaire.
Well, I wouldn't say I was a millionaire. I spent probably a good portion of that at the drugstore on video games back in the 80s, which was that era. So, no, I don't think I have any of those funds still lingering. Let's just say that.
Well, I'm messing with you for sure. So, middle-class family, what did your sort of parents do for their occupations?
My dad was an airport engineer, so he worked on airports, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So she raised us and my sister and I. That was a chore. Let's just say that.
So your sister is older or younger?
Younger sister.
Okay, so the big older brother. Now, does she look up to you, or just say you're just a pain?
Well, she would probably say I was a pain, and even though she was younger, she was taller than me until I was about 12, which really drove me nuts. We went to a place called Kings Island once. And they have those cars that run on the tracks that you don't really steer, it steers it for you.
Yes, exactly.
We went there and she got to sit in the driver's seat and I didn't. That was a bad black day in my life.
It sounds like you're still wounded from that, Jay.
I don't want to talk about it anymore.
We're gonna do a post-show counseling session.
Yes, okay. I got my checkbook out.
Well, I get that. I'm not the tallest person in the room either, and so when you're height restricted. You just say, oh, man, please, I want to be a little bit taller than some of these basketball stars that are 7 foot for sure. So with that, Jay, what was kind of high school like for you?
High school was pleasant. I was one of what I would refer to as one of the invisible kids. I got average grades. I was average in sports. It was a good experience. It was one of those times where you make the best friends of sometimes of your life, and I still got 2 friends that were my best friends in high school, and they're still instrumental in my life just because of the bonds that we created years and years and years ago. So it's a good experience until my sophomore year when we moved to Colorado in the middle of my sophomore year, which was, it was a transition, and my parents tell me now that they really regretted doing that, but I've told them for years that was probably one of the best things that could have happened to me because it got me out of my shell. It required me to go out on the edge, to step out a little more, and I think that's really part of the reason that I started my own company is that I had to get past the complacency or commonality of what I was living at that point. So it's a good experience.
So was your dad transferred? Is that what happened?
Yeah, he basically moved, took a position out in Colorado, and so we followed him.
Well, it's amazing when you're 16 years old what you might do.
That's for sure.
I think we're coming with you, Dad. So you finish your high school. Then where did you transition from there?
So from high school, I went to college for a year, University of Northern Colorado. My wife and I got married and
So what were you
continued in
taking in
college.
that year, Jay?
Accounting and economics, which is I love. I love math. I love numbers. I don't know if that makes me some kind of weird person, but I really do. I love spreadsheets and all of that.
You'll get over it. You'll get over it.
I hope not. So
I'm just messing with you. As an individual who teaches personality and personality assessments, I get it completely. It's just something natural. And so you go for a year. So did you finish, or did you just kind of depart?
I didn't. I was going into the Marine Corps Reserve while I was going to college. My wife is 4 years older than me. She already had her degree, so we got married. I was continuing college, and it turns out 3 months into our marriage, we had planned on waiting until I was graduated college before we started having children, which I just absolutely was passionate about. I wanted to have kids. 3 months into our marriage, she's sitting at the side of the bed crying, and I wake up and I'm like, "What's wrong?" And she's like, "It's blue." I'm like, "What do you mean it's blue?" Well, she showed me the little pregnancy test thing, and it was a blue strip. And so I was like, okay. So we made the decision, and I went ahead and went into the Marine Corps full time because I've always wanted to be a Marine. So instead of reserves, I went full time. And
cool. Now you skipped over this whole thing about my wife, and then she's pregnant. But where did you meet her? What's the story there?
Oh, okay. Actually, I met my wife at church. She was one of the youth group sponsors, and I just fell in love with her. But she told me for 2.5 years while I'm in high school, "No, I'm too old for you. Find someone else." And then finally, after high school, I said, "Come on, let's give me a shot." And she did. And we, the interesting thing was
messing with an older woman. Okay, Jay. Apparently it seems to work out. How long have you been married now?
31 years.
So you're just kind of getting started.
Yeah, basically just getting over that initial hump of getting to know each other.
Exactly. Well, there you go. Well, you know what? She was wise not to mess with you, especially she was in a leader role.
Yes, she was.
Yeah. Nowadays they say, okay, my daughter is now marrying into a family, and her future sister-in-law married the youth leader as well, but he is 10 years her senior.
Oh,
so
wow.
They've been married now for, I think, 3 or 4 years, so it's going well. We saw him the other day, and it's great. So I'm glad that worked out. I just think the audience needed to know that, that process. So you dropped out of school and went into the Marine Corps. Now, were you full-time, or were you kind of local, or what?
I was in the Marine Corps full-time for 5 years.
Okay, and so were you deployed anywhere?
No, we were, let's see, we went from San Diego to Beaufort, South Carolina, to actually Millington, Tennessee, to Beaufort, South Carolina, to Washington, D.C. I was stationed at Andrews Air Force Base my last 2.5 years.
So, cool.
That was interesting, being a Marine on an Air Force base.
So explain that to the audience there. What's that like?
Well, I was a technician for the communication, navigation, weapon systems for an F-18 squadron that is stationed at Andrews Air Force Base. And so we had F-16s just to the left and some other Air Force planes just to the right. So we're kind of in the middle. It was interesting. I mean, we got along great, but we were Marines and we were the grunts. So, but it was a good experience. There's a lot of really good people in the Air Force. My dad was an Air Force guy, so he gave me one heck of a hard time for being a Marine stationed at an Air Force base. Of course,
you guys do that. My uncle is a retired colonel from the Army, so I get it. So everybody has their own bias about who's better than the other. It's just part of that space.
It is.
For those of you that are not into the military, no worries. You'll get over it. No worries.
Yep.
You won't have to listen to that. So what was really driving you to join? Into enlist?
This sounds weird, but whenever my dad taught me years ago, from as far as I can remember, if you're going to do something, challenge yourself to the best. And not that the Marines are the best over the Army, Air Force, or anybody else, but they're perceived as the toughest to be one. And so that was a challenge for me. And you're probably reading a lot into this, and there's a lot to read into it, but I love a challenge. Don't tell me I can't do something. Don't tell me it's not possible, because that's all I need. That's the trigger I need to motivate me and do it. And being 5'5", it was really funny, because when I was in boot camp, until about 4 weeks into boot camp, they march you in order of height. I was on the back row. So everywhere we marched, I was on the back row because it goes all the way from the tallest to the smallest, and guess who was one of the smallest? That would be me.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I think at 5'5", yeah, the odds would be in your favor.
Yeah.
Now, after that, let's just stay here for a second, Jay, before we get into your business and what you're doing now and helping others. But if you were to describe to the audience some of the principles, and we've had, military individuals on the show before, but what would be some of the skills or character traits or things that you learned in that 5 years that you found extremely valuable that would be helpful for the audience to consider?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is discipline. Discipline is something that requires you to not take the easy road. Discipline, for me, at least from my perspective, is discipline says that this is where I'm going to go. This is my objective. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what I'm going to do. And it acknowledges at the very beginning that there's going to be obstacles. There's going to be difficulties. There's going to be things that make it almost impossible to do. But discipline and perseverance, I think, are what get you through it. Acknowledging those things in advance, that you're going to have struggles, you're going to want to give up, makes discipline for me much more of a reality than a theory, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So at 5.5, at 5'5", so I was taking the numbers and your height and merging the two together. So I got a lot of dyslexia when it works for you. Were there some people that were in your camp that were washed out that didn't make it?
There were, and it's surprising. We had a couple guys that washed out, and they were the bigger guys. We had one guy that was he could have been a bodybuilder. He was just a freak of nature. Mm-hmm. And, physically he had it all going on. He had everything he needed. But mentally, he wasn't prepared. And I don't know if things had come very easy for him, and he thought that, the Marine Corps was going to be just all physical, but it's not. It wasn't by any means. In fact, I'd say probably 70% of the battle was mental and emotional. So, but yes, absolutely. And it was a surprise to everybody because we figured they would be the ones who would rise to the top, and they didn't.
Mm. Anything else about that experience that would be helpful for the listeners to
absolutely
consider?
One of the most interesting things that I can remember is 4 weeks into boot camp, my senior drill instructor walked up to us. We're on the obstacle course, and he walked up to my entire platoon and asked the question, who here wants to challenge a senior drill instructor to the obstacle course? Well, I raised my hand. I was the only one to raise my hand, so I raised my hand. And so I got up there in the front, and we started going through it, and we got through it. We got all the way to the last obstacle, which was the rope. You have to climb the rope. And so they made me – I actually got there before he did, so the other drill instructors made me wait. And he got there, so we both started climbing the rope, and I'm climbing up just using my arms to get all the way to the top, tap the post, recruit Hodge, platoon 2005, senior drill instructor, Staff Sergeant Ramos, and I start on my way down. And I get about halfway down, and the other drill instructors at the bottom of the rope just come unglued. And they said, you just kicked your senior drill instructor in the head. Get back up there and apologize. So I climbed all the way back up and got all the way to the top and apologized to my senior drill instructor. Now, that's not the best part of the story. The best part of the story is that night when we're all standing there in our skivvies doing our inspection and they're walking around, senior drill instructor walked up to me and he says, do you think you can lead this platoon? I said, sir, yes, sir. And from that moment on, I was the platoon leader. So the shortest guy over the rest of the people, 60-something people. And it just goes back to what I was talking about before, discipline and the courage to step out. And that's why I said moving to Colorado really kind of changed who I was.
Well, and, you took a chance. And what do you think was going through the mind later on? I imagine some of your buddies in your company, what were they thinking that they didn't put their hand up? What was holding them back?
Well, they told me flat out, you're nuts. Why would you do that? I think it's because in boot camp, and I guess it's really the same in life, it's easier to exist inside the crowd than to be the one at the front of the crowd. to be the one that sits at the front of the class, to be the one that steps out and takes a stand. And, a lot of our society struggle with that. That's not how I'm made. And I really believe that a lot of the success that I've been blessed with has been the result of me being willing to raise my hand or to step out and say, I'll do that.
Exactly. And, the same thing for audience members, our Secrets of Success listeners is, getting these levels of achievement. You don't get that hiding in the crowd. You do have to step out. You do have to take chances. You do have to, it does require some courage, or just, scared out of your pants kind of situation where you say, okay,
absolutely.
Yeah, oh, hey, you're crazy. You're nuts. Oh, hey, that's fine. But I'm also now leading the platoon. So with that said, after the 5 years, why? I mean, you could have stayed in longer. Why leave?
We made the decision, my wife and I. I have a son, Justin, who was born visually impaired, and we made the decision that, raising him to live a normal, functional life, I needed to be at home. And so I knew that I was going to be deployed. If I stayed in past my 5, I was going to be deployed probably overseas. And so my wife and I made a quality of life decision to stay, for me to get another job, and for us to raise our son and daughter together, for me to be there. And so it was for my son, plain and simple.
Well, congratulations on that. So in some ways I was going to ask the question, how hard was that? But what did it mean to you internally, where you really, to a certain extent, gave up your dream about being a Marine for your life?
It was. I always wanted to be a Marine, but there was one thing that I always wanted to be more than that, and that was a dad. From the time I was 11, 12 years old, I've always wanted to be a dad. I always wanted to raise children and watch them succeed. Because from my perspective, nothing that I have ever accomplished, I don't care what my bank account says, I don't care what the trophies or what the plaques or anything else, none of them compare to watching my kids succeed. That blows everything I've done out of the water.
Well, as a father of a 25 and soon to be 24-year-old, I can concur with that as well. So then what did you go, when you left the Marines, what did you go into?
So when I left the Marines, I became a deputy out in Wyoming. I realized after about 6 months, great department, great team, but that's not what I was passionate about. I'm passionate about business. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm passionate about business. And so my wife and I made the very difficult decision for me to go back to school. With the wife and 2 kids, we lived in a 576 square foot apartment for 3 years, 3.5 years, while I completed my bachelor's degree. And, people will think, oh my gosh, how did you live in a 576 square foot apartment with a wife, 2 kids, and a dog, and a hamster, actually, that whole time? And I look back on it, and to be very honest, my wife and I sit on our 13-acre property with ponds and streams and everything that we've always dreamed about having, and we look at that little 576 square foot apartment, the fact we didn't have any money in the checking account, and those were some of the happiest 3.5 years of our lives. We had nothing, but we had everything. I guess the easiest way to say it.
So what would you say to listeners about the kind of sacrifice you went through there to get to where you're at? How do you apply that story to your training and the work that you do with leaders and managers now?
I think the easiest way to sum that up is called delayed gratification. It would have been very easy for me to leave the sheriff's department, find another job, or go back into the military, to be honest. But it was one of those things that, my parents taught me that anything worth achieving is going to take some time. Nothing great ever comes easy, and there's a lot of truth to that. And so my wife and I, there were some times when we questioned ourselves, is it worth it? We realized that, 3.5 years sounds like a long period of time when you're at the front of it, but as you get towards the middle and you get towards the end, you realize that 3.5 years is just 3.5 years, and it's a speck in the timeline of your life, I guess is the easiest way to say that. So, and it just took some perseverance and looking out in the future and realizing what was coming and having faith that for us that God's plan was being revealed and He was leading us in that direction.
For sure, Jay. Now, with that, you finished school. What did you go into?
I was offered a position by Ford Finance out in South Carolina. So we took that position. I went out there. Then I realized I didn't really care for accounting that much. That was my degree, accounting. So, but what I did enjoy, and this is kind of where the whole plot twists, I enjoyed operations. So flight operations in the Marine Corps, absolutely the greatest job in the world for me. So what I realized is that operations and the financial side of operations, the accounting side of it, they actually go really well together. And so my that's really where my career blossomed, is from that point on. I became an operations manager for an organization. Then I ended up working for General Motors in operations, then Toyota, then Caterpillar, then Tenet Healthcare, then my own company. So it was, that's why I tell my kids is, well, two of them have already graduated, but I'm telling my 18-year-old right now who just graduated, you're going to go in, you're going to get your degree in this, but don't be surprised if after your first year you modify your degree a little, or after you finish your degree, if you don't change or modify what you actually do. And I think that's actually very common. A lot of the people that I've hired over the years, the degree that they actually have from college doesn't match what they're actually doing, but what they're doing is what they're passionate about.
Well, that is common, and my wife was an academic coach at a university, and as a career coach, for sure, my son changed his majors, I think 5 or 6 times in his first year. So part of when kids are that age, 17, 18, 19, even 20, is here's the research, Jay, and then you can share it with your audience later on, is what they call the reflective mind doesn't even mature till you're about 19 years of age. And so what we mean by that is you have a situation in life that's occurred, and then your ability to really look at that and think about it and what it means to your life really doesn't come to age until you're 19. So that's why first and second year students change their majors so often, is they're just figuring it out. So parents that are listening, chill out. This changing their mind, that is normal. That is the way that it goes. And then finally, my son just said, hey, I'm just going to take general studies. Screw it. I'm just going to take the courses I love and I enjoy. And then he ended up getting a minor in business, which he enjoyed, but he didn't want to major in business because it required stats, and he hated stats, and he failed at math, and all this kind of stuff. So, allow that flexibility. And so I'm just taking off on where you talked, Jay, to say, life is really about figuring it out as you went. Now, here's kind of a question that maybe one or two listeners are thinking about. How come you couldn't keep a job? You work for all these different suppliers. And of course, I'm messing with Jay a little bit here, listeners. Toyota, GM, Caterpillar. So that's a lot of different companies over the years. So what was sort of driving this continuous kind of shift?
So, and I'll clarify, I'm 53 years old, so when I say from this company to this company, I spent 5 years at General Motors. And, when you're at General Motors, the benchmark, especially during that era, was Toyota. And so, General Motors was kind of fashioning a lot of their operations after the Toyota way and the Toyota production system. And so when I got a call from Toyota about coming in, taking a position with them, it was a no-brainer. Why not just go to the source of lean management system, of lean? And so I did, and I spent almost 5 years at Toyota. Now, once and everybody that's been at Toyota can probably justify this, once you have Toyota on your resume, that becomes a draw. And so Caterpillar, great company, was going through a phase where they also wanted to implement the Toyota production system. They call it CPS, Caterpillar Production System. So they flavored it to themselves because it's a very different industry, very different dynamics. But they wanted to accomplish the same thing because they saw the value in the system itself. And so I ended up working for Caterpillar for about 3 years. And from Caterpillar, Tenet Healthcare. So I don't know how many people realize this, or when they look at lean, they look at the philosophy, the transformational culture. Healthcare is about, I'd say, 15 to 20 years behind manufacturing when it comes to lean philosophies and understanding the efficiencies of it, the benefits of it, and the cultural transformation. So I got a call from a friend who worked at a healthcare company, and he said, listen, we see the value. We want to do this at this company. Can you come join us? And so for me, this kind of goes back to what you were talking about with your son. I'm passionate. I love operations. I love manufacturing. It's just outstanding. I've never been in healthcare. So I'm thinking to myself, I don't know anything about healthcare, but what I do understand are processes. And this is where it gets very interesting, because a lot of people think that lean is all about waste. It's not. It's about understanding your processes so that you can eliminate waste and improve or increase value for your customers or your patients. So it was actually a very, very good transition, perfect fit, and I've been working with healthcare companies for the last 3 years.
Cool. Well, as I was hired by Chrysler to do their process reengineering project, this is way back in the 90s, Jay, so I get that. And, when you think about it, I think many people would actually be shocked on how poorly run, when we talk about systems, processes, checklists, that kind of stuff, many industries are. So my son's a pilot. Thank goodness there are checklists for most pilots to take off. Those systems have taken years. Same thing, you were in the Air Force, you probably had a maintenance checklist, you had protocols, you had systems. My very good friend who passed away from cancer now was a aviator on an aircraft carrier. And he said, it is one of the most highly orchestrated environments in the world. And he says, if you don't, many people die. So that's part of where, when you think about healthcare, the amount of errors, mistakes with patients dying from errors, they're significant around the world every year. Why? Lack of systems and processes, right?
Right. Yep, exactly right. Lack of standards. And that's where it's a perfect point. The simple stuff like drawing blood or delivering meds or taking samples that you're going to send to the lab. You've got 5 or 6 nurses doing it 5 or 6 different ways. How can you ever say that you have a quality process when you don't even actually have a process that's being followed? You have 6 processes. Which one's the best? Which one's delivering the highest quality, the best safety, the best outcomes? Well, until you have standards, until you have defined processes, you don't. You never know. And when you have a quality defect or you have a problem, where did it originate from? You'll never find out, because you have 6 different processes being used. So exactly right.
Exactly. And so we get that. And that happens for, think about even like kids and discipline. When you have chaos really does stress kids out, even if they're 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So the more that you can bring some, and then we're not talking about, quote unquote, a military format to your household. But when you bring structure, when you bring discipline, then good things happen. So this book, I'm kind of curious about this book, Jay.
Yeah.
So Lean Treasure Chest, Photos for Fatherhood. When did you publish that? I don't have that here on my list.
Sure. So the Photos of Fatherhood is a book I published back in 2006. The Lean Treasure Chest is a book I published last year. And it's doing good. And, I'm not going to really take credit for the benefit that it provides, because it's a compilation of years and years and years of experience working with some phenomenal teams and some outstanding, amazing mentors. But the book, The Lean Treasure Chest, is about getting everybody to understand what lean is. I've seen organizations, and I know you've seen this, where you walk in and they have a continuous improvement department or a black belt department, and they're responsible for fixing everything. And that's not how an effective organization works. So the reason I wrote the book was simple. Lean isn't about the directors and the VPs and the COOs understanding what lean is and saying, hey, go do this. Lean is about every single person in that organization.
Jay, just before we go forward, and I apologize, audience.
No.
Many of you do not know what Lean stands for. So it's an acronym, so fire it away.
So Lean is actually a philosophy. Lean was developed by Toyota. It's basically the reduction of waste within processes. but it's also the reduction of waste within processes to improve or increase the value to your patients or customers. It's kind of like the great example is when you go buy a steak. A lean steak has very little fat on it, because how many of you eat the fat? Well, hopefully none of you actually eat the fat. But a lean steak has very little fat on it. If a steak that has a lot of fat on it, a lot of waste, it's kind of a waste of money, because you're not going to eat the fat. So you're paying for money. You're paying for a steak or for parts of the steak that are not actually adding any value, because you're just going to throw them away. Same thing in our processes. Everything that we do is a process. Thinking about what isn't a process is actually a process. Breathing is a process. Dying is a process. Reading a book is a process. Everything that organizations do to create value is a process, and that process has many, 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 many steps. So lean is about understanding those processes at a microscopic level to identify what's adding value and what is not adding value, and then trying to eliminate or reduce those.
Now, if I may interrupt your flow so I don't forget or miss it. So
Sure.
What was the book about Photos of Fatherhood about then?
It was just stories of fatherhood, my stories and pictures of me raising our first two kids. And it just talks about how to be proud of them, how to be humble as a father. And let me point something out. The reason that I could write the book is because I wasn't, and I learned some very, very valuable lessons as I was raising our first two kids. So it's a fun book, but if it brings a tear to your eye, don't be surprised. Let's just say that.
So what was the motivation to even write it in the first place?
I wanted to leave a legacy for my kids, and that sounds corny. I know it sounds cliche, but I wanted my kids and my grandkids and my great-grandkids to have something that showed not just a picture of me, but showed my heart. And I told you the only thing that I wanted more than the Marine Corps was to be a father. I think it stemmed from that. I wanted my kids and my grandkids and my great-great-grandkids to know how much Dad loved them, Grandpa loved them.
Excellent. Well, it's my stepfather-in-law. He's passed away from dementia a couple of years ago now. So married my wife's mom. They both were widowed, but he wrote a sort of autobiography of his first half of his life, and it was fascinating. I actually when I picked it up, I didn't put it down. He was actually a missionary during the Vietnam. Well, he was a chaplain during the Vietnam War. So we was telling his war stories as his Cessna 172 was being shot up, and he was going to different camps. So my encouragement, those of you that are listening, even if you had a little journal, think about what Jay has done as a legacy there. So, Jay, we only have about 8 or 10 minutes left. So I just want to get around a few things. So first of all, before we jump into that, I want to make sure while people are listening, how do they find out more about you, Jay, and what you're doing and your company and some of the things you're doing? How can they get a hold of you?
Easiest way to do that is probably to go to the website, the company website, that just the letter J, HODGEASSOC.com. Talks about the company. It talks all about. It describes the experts in the network that they can reach out to at any time. They don't have to go through me to do it. And it talks about why we exist. Plain and simple. We exist for our customers. Our success is literally not defined by anything we do. Our success is defined by the impact and the success of our customers and our clients.
Very good. And where can they get your book?
They can get it on Amazon. They can go on basically any website where you can buy books. It's on Audible. It's on a Kindle. So.
Yeah, and for those listening, it's called The Lean Treasure Chest. So with that, just a few more comments about what you're learning in the field. There is you talk about in your bio about the difference between a good manager and a good leader. So we have a mixed audience. We have some entrepreneurs, some sort of professional developers. What have you found in the field there as far as what's going on with management leaders? What's good, what's not so good, and just share that with us.
Sure. And I think most of the audience can probably relate to this from experiences. What I tend to see in manufacturing, service, or healthcare is that we have a tendency to take people that are very good at their job and promote them to supervisor, we promote them to manager, we promote them to director, we promote them to VP, thinking that because they were good at the job or at the functional level activity that they're going to be a great leader. And it's a mistake. And I've seen so many people that were outstanding at what they did break at certain levels because we don't take the time to teach what it means to lead. Leadership is not about the process as much as it is people. In order to lead, you have to be followed. And a machine, a robot, a lathe, a hospital bed doesn't follow you. People follow you. And so my biggest passion, to be very honest, is teaching people how to lead. What does it mean to effectively lead? And one of the first things that always comes out is it's not about you anymore. When you become a leader, it is about your team. Your job is to provide them with the tools, resources, knowledge, and everything that they need to succeed, because they are actually the ones creating the product or the service for the customers. So that's what I see. And I think, as I work with organizations, the realization of that becomes very, very clear when I'm sitting in a room with the CEO and a bunch of VPs, and I say, tell me about your leadership development program. And that's what I hear a lot of times. Oh, we bought everybody a book. I'm like, oh, that's nice. How many of them read it? We don't know. Did you read it? Well, no, because we're already in this position. Well, I think you kind of get where I'm going at. Is we assume that leadership is just something that's just a natural migration or a natural evolution, and it's not.
Let's just settle in the bird's nest right here for a moment. And that is, there's some pretty intelligent people that that are around the room. And this is no different than my 32 years or 31 years in this industry as well. Very apparent. So in your opinion, why are intelligent people still missing this step? How is it that we have these amazing, multi-million, billion-dollar companies that still don't get that?
I'm just going to be 100% transparent. I think it's because a lot of the people that may be currently in those positions never received the leadership training, so they never understood the value of it, so it's not a priority for them to have their teams go through it. The best leaders that I've worked with in the last 25 years are the ones who understand that leadership is something you develop in a person. It can come from the knowledge aspect can come from a book, but the application comes from the development and the mentoring by someone who is a leader.
And so they didn't get it, and even though they're intelligent, they're sharp, for some reason they still don't acknowledge, even if they didn't get it, they don't acknowledge it sort of in their own space, in their head space, that it would be needed now that they're the leader for the people that they serve.
Yeah, it's just a continual vicious circle. I work with a CEO out in Olathe, Kansas right now, probably one of the greatest leaders I've worked with. He's been a CEO for years, but he acknowledges the fact that he has opportunities as a leader, and he wants the people that work for him to be better leaders than he is. Now, what a statement! You talk about humility, and yeah, I'm in awe when I talk with him.
Well, of course, you worked in the auto industry, but you were at Toyota and GM, but I worked in the auto industry as a consultant for a decade as well. And sometimes I was actually quite amazed of individuals that were in senior positions, VP positions, who really were, I can't even say the words on air.
Right.
But a jerk is kind of being nice. You can, times 10 on that. I just beyond me how they even got promoted to those positions. What is sort of you noticed about how people that are incompetent get in these positions? How do they get there?
Well, you already said you're not going to use some words on the air, so I guess I can't use some of them either. I think a lot of people get into those positions because they're what I refer to as bobbleheads. If they want to be promoted to the next level, and they will sell their mother to get it done. They'll throw friendships, relationships, trust under the bridge to get to that next level. And the sad part is that organizations that put leaders in those roles propagate that throughout the rest of the leadership team, because everybody sees it. You don't fool anybody. If a leader is not respected or trusted by the team, they're phony, and people see right through phony, and they won't trust them. But I think it's just because people they want something, and they don't realize that a lot of times the position, what you give up for certain positions, when you get it a certain way, you've given up your character, your honor, your integrity. You've given up the things that are actually the most important things that you will ever have. And
a lot of those things, of course, we've all watched the movies. Now, I'm Canadian, but I have a brother-in-law in the U.S., and the founder of my company was born in California, so he's a dual citizen. We know that in the Marines, a lot of times you have this, honor and integrity is a critical part of just the function. You can't even have a team without it. It just falls apart. So with that being said, the question I have for you, and that you want to pass on to the audience, beyond the word humble, which you've used a few times for affirmation, is what are some other characteristics you believe are important for leaders that they need really to kind of embrace if they're going to be part of this shift to this new style of leadership?
They have to be honest and accountable. You and I have, in fact, everybody listening to this has probably seen or worked for leaders that said, this is what we're going to do, this is what I expect. And then they do the exact opposite, but they expect everybody else to follow the direction. You have to live the example. You have to walk the walk. Like they say many, many times, your greatest example doesn't come through what you say, it comes through what you do. And I think for a lot of leaders, a positive attitude. This last 3 or 4 months has been a great example of what an effective leader really does, because a leader during a difficult time, and people are looking to you. It's like on a ship that's having difficulty. Where's everybody looking? They're looking at the captain, and the captain of the ship, whether it's an organization, hospital, anything. The leader of that organization is the captain. People are looking to you for confidence. They're looking to you for hope. So a leader that doesn't convey that, hey, we're going to make it, we can do this, is really failing their team. So I think that positive attitude, not a fake attitude, but a positive, confident attitude, it is critical.
Well, to really put you on the spot, Jay, are you ready? Are you ready?
Oh, man. Are you really going here? Even after you just said I was in the Air Force, I don't know if I want to answer this question.
No, well, you don't know where I'm going with this. But after, we only have about 3 minutes left. Jay, one of the things when you think about it, and this is global, so I'm not trying to single anybody out or any party out, but with both of us know, and listeners know, these are the qualities and characteristics of great leaders. In your opinion, why do we not see this in politics?
I think because if you look at politics, we've created a political system where to get anything done, you have to bend here to get people on your side. And so we've created a political environment of compromise. And that's not to say that there's not great politicians out there, but I think for the most honorable, character-driven politician, I think for them to get anything done, you have to bend, and it's created a very vanilla system where we have to give here and you take this and you give that. And I understand that there are different needs and that there are different drives and different philosophies on different things in our society. But there's some things that should not be up for compromise, and I think we've created an environment where everything's up for compromise.
For sure. So, anyways, I just thought I'd be playful with you about that, Jay. So we're close to the end here. Beyond what you've said up to this point, Jay, what's the last piece of wisdom you want to share with the audience today about, how they might be able to be a better father or mother or brother or dad or leader of a company? What would you say to the audience that sort of as your closing words?
Sure. I think if you want to leave a legacy, and that's my ultimate desire, is not to be thought of as the greatest person in the world. A legacy for me is defined by the success of the people that I've touched, the kids that I've raised, the wife that I've been married to for 31 years. If you want to leave a legacy, you just have to remember one thing. It's not about you. And everything that you do, if you make it about everyone else, you'll be successful. Plain and simple. So.
Well, Jay, our time's up already. Hey, where to go?
I know. I can't believe that.
It just evaporated. We've covered the world.
We did.
Yeah. So, but thanks for hanging out with us here on The Secrets of Success.
Well, Ken, thank you so much again. It literally has been an honor and a privilege to be part of what you do, and what you do is so important, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jay. Stay on the line.
Okay.
So individuals, go see Jay on a site. It's Jay Hodge, and it's associates, but it's abbreviated. We'll put it in the show notes for you. Find out more what he's doing. Maybe get his book on the lean treasure chest if you are responsible for any kind of processes. And guess what? Processes can apply to the home too, just like anything else in your life. When we think about leadership in life, and I appreciate what Jay ended with, and that we do work on purpose, is that, my ability to really serve others is equal to or less than my own development. So work on yourself. Help yourself to be better at, maybe that's not the right word, but develop yourself to get to this level where you can stand in courage and still be humble. And there's somebody around you that needs your help right now. Could be just a friend, could be somebody at work, could be a family member. So just step up to that. Think about that, because there's always somebody else that's worse off than ourselves. So thank you as always for spending your time with us. If you like what we're doing, just please pass it on. Leave a positive comment on whatever platform you're listening on. So thank you for listening to The Secrets of Success. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Keis.
Thanks for exploring the secrets of success with us. If you want to keep the momentum going, log on to crgleader.com. Scroll to the bottom and sign up for our inspirational emails. You can also take your success to the next level by following us on Facebook and Twitter and connecting with Ken on LinkedIn. We hope you have a great week and look forward to you joining us next time for the Secrets of Success podcast with Dr. Ken Keis.